Manchester United beaten, though, Gary, 1-0 by Arsenal. On a day, despite that scoreline, I presume you agree, not without its positives for United.
Yeah, I actually thought that they played well. I thought they were the better team in the game in terms of performance. But we know that performance sometimes, obviously, isn't enough. And that Arsenal have got real resilience and they can sort of hang in there and sort of grind out, 1-0 victories, and that was really good from Arsenal. But I just thought there were some positives. I thought Cunha and Mbeumo, I think probably Mbeumo more in the first half, Cunha more in the second half, but I think they showed that they can sort of handle sort of a big game at Old Trafford. They showed they've got the quality and the ability. I thought Cunha looks a really good player. We obviously know that from Wolves, but you can see it's interesting. I actually thought that when Mount was on the pitch, they actually looked a little bit better up front in terms of connecting it. Now, obviously, Seshko had to come on and he was only on for 20 minutes and to try and sort of get that goal. But I actually thought when Mount and particularly Cunha on that side of the pitch, they looked like they did combine well with each other. I actually thought United found it more difficult the more subs they made. But I thought there were some positives for United. Obviously, there's a long way to go. This is a tough start. Arsenal, potential champions this season. It's only going to be Arsenal, Liverpool or City. So we know that Arsenal are a tough team to beat, tough team to break down. The goalkeeper's very good. The back four outstanding. They had two full-backs that came on that would probably get in 99% of teams in this league. So, yeah, I wasn't not too downhearted. It's the first game of the season. I thought the system worked better. I actually thought the back three did very well of Shaw, De Ligt and Yoro. I thought that Manchester United defended really well. I actually thought Casemiro and Fernandes played well in midfield, and I thought that was going to be a difficult game for those two against Zubimendi, Rice and Ødegaard. I thought they could get outnumbered, but they didn't. Casemiro and Fernandes, I thought, held their own. So, I think United over the course of that match, in terms of the football that they played and their performance, were probably the better team. But we know, obviously, they've lost the game, and that's what matters.
And presumably, if Manchester United played well and lost, then there must be some good things to say about Arsenal too.
Yeah, look, I think that I said a couple of weeks ago, Arsenal have got to pretend that the very first game of this season is February, and that was a February-March type performance. Go away from home, win at Old Trafford 1-0. That's a big, big result. Now, it's happened very early in the season, but it'll give them real confidence. They'll travel back to London tonight and they'll feel, together. They didn't play well, Arsenal. I mean, their football, really, for the players that they have out on that pitch, in terms of Rice, Zubimendi, Ødegaard, Saka, Martinelli, Gyökeres, they really did let themselves down at times, particularly, I think, on the counter-attack. They were really sloppy. Didn't really get their passing going. I thought they actually started the game quite jittery. I thought the two centre-backs who actually grew in the game and are outstanding, they're a brilliant pair, but I thought Saliba had one of the shakiest 10 minutes that I've seen from him in that first period of the game. So, yeah, I think for them to get a clean sheet here, to get a win at Old Trafford and not be at their best, which they were well off their best, and they'll certainly get better than that, I thought was a real plus. But just little things, that front three, very early on, Martinelli, Saka, Gyökeres, they've got to be better than that. I thought United's front three of Mount, Cunha and Mbeumo, that's the first time they played together in a Premier League game. I thought they were a lot better in terms of their combinations and play than Arsenal's front three. I thought United's front three were better. So that's something to work on. Obviously, it's very early. I thought Gyökeres actually looked a handful. I thought he did some good things. I was actually surprised he came off. I thought Arsenal actually, they didn't change defensively when the substitutes were made, but they lost their attacking threat completely, I felt, when Gyökeres went off. So, yeah, things to work on. But the big thing for Mikel Arteta, he's got a very resilient bunch. They're good at set pieces. They're a good defensive unit. They're just going to have to have a little bit more sparkle up front. But that's Old Trafford's a tough place to come, and it's the first game of the season. So, yeah, well done to Arsenal. I think it's a big victory for them.
And of the three clubs that you've just said can win the league, in your opinion, they have all won first up. So shall we go back and take them one by one? Liverpool, first up, Friday night. Fabulous football match, obviously stained by that horrible racist incident.
Yeah.
But in terms of first of all, the tributes to Diogo Jota, beautiful. And then the match itself, really thrilling. A really good launch night at Anfield. And what did you make of Liverpool?
Yeah, the game was great. I think Semenyo, to be fair, not just in his performance, but actually his statements that he made yesterday, has just been the star of this weekend, without a shadow of a doubt. I thought it was incredible, his words that he put out on social media yesterday. Demonstrates what a man and what a character he is. And what he suffered there on Friday night is just absolutely unacceptable. And that's the first thing to say. But it was an outstanding game, marred by that incident. You know, the thrill of the game in terms of how Liverpool play, how Bournemouth then came back into it, and then Liverpool obviously scored the late goals. We had that debate at the end with Arne Slot, me and Jamie Carragher, because there's part of me loves that type of football, the leaving 2-on-2 at the back, the full-backs going forward, and even at 2-1 up, sort of over-committing. That's how we played out here for many, many years, and just it's that risk element of football. I think Liverpool are going to be a thrilling watch, and if they sign Isak, even more thrilling. And Ekitike had an outstanding Premier League debut. So, yeah, there was a lot of good out there on Friday night for us to watch amongst that sort of horrible incident. And it was a thrilling game. And, you know, credit to Liverpool for coming back towards the end. But they've got so much firepower. They can score goals. And they're going to win a lot of games, maybe 3-2, 4-2, 3-1. You know, I think Arne Slot and the Liverpool players will want to see them get more solid defensively. I think the fullbacks will need to settle down a little bit defensively. Kirkes was quite rash, and he'll just need to, it's understandable. It's his first game at Anfield. Frimpong, I thought he was actually doing quite well, but obviously, again, he got substituted. So, yeah, there are some questions, I think, for Liverpool in respect of their sort of defensive side of their game and their balance in midfield. Obviously, without Gravenberch, they look like they lack a bit of legs, and there's a lot of space in there, which is not something we were used to last season. But they've got some very, very good players, and they've got more players to come in, I think. So, yeah, a good start for them, but bits to work on, as you'd expect.
And perhaps, my opinion doesn't matter, but alongside Semenyo, who you rightly say is the star of the weekend, perhaps next in that list could be Tijani Reinders. I mean, he was a joy for City yesterday.
Yeah, we didn't know he was that good, did we? Actually, I was doing the podcast earlier on in the week, and Jill Scott had obviously watched quite a bit of City in pre-season, and she said Reinders really good, watch out for him. And obviously I've seen him play, but then you watched him yesterday. It's the first game. We shouldn't get carried away by anything that we've seen in this first weekend, because things will start to obviously even themselves out and things will start to settle down. But what an outstanding game he had. And when you just look at the profile of a player and you think he scores with his left foot, his pass is with his right foot, the one that's over the top for Rico Lewis. His running power, forward and back. And you start thinking, ooh, that looks one hell of a play. There are very few players that you can see score a goal like that with a left foot, a pass with the right foot. You know, the running power forward and sort of the ability to sort of drive into that space. No, it was a really, I was watching him last night in that game, and I thought if I was a City manager, fan, teammate, I'd be thinking, oh, hang on a minute. You know, people haven't written City off, let's be clear, they haven't, but they're asking questions as to whether this squad is as good as Arsenal or Liverpool, and rightly so, thinking always that they've got this manager who's a genius who doesn't not win Premier League titles or titles 2 years on the bounce. So you've always got that in the back of your mind. You've got the question mark over Rodri, so you're thinking, will Stones stay fit all season? Is Rodri going to be fit? Have they got that sort of ability up top to sparkle? But you've got Foden, Shirky, you've got obviously Bernardo Silva, Marmoush, Haaland. If you get Reinders and Rodri in there with Bernardo Silva, and you're thinking, hang on a minute, that's a hell of a team. Now, it's obviously they have to keep the defenders fit. But City, it's ridiculous to think of them as sort of, I'm almost like making them sound like dark horses. Manchester City, Pep Guardiola's team that's won a treble and won many championships in the last 5 years. But they just dropped off so quickly and so violently, really. It was like off the edge of a cliff. But Reinders, yesterday, and the way in which City performed, it's too early to say that they go right up there as champions. But if they keep Rodri fit, Reinders fit in midfield, and Haaland and Diaz and Stones, that spine is as good as anything you'll see in this league, and they'll be really, really tough to stop.
Yeah, it is interesting. I know I'm guilty of being reactionary and first weekend, and you think something, don't you? But as you rightly said, it's been really fascinating that in this sort of prediction season, Manchester City have been relatively little mentioned, and without, or try to avoid being guilty of reacting to the first weekend. Do you feel that in terms of your expectations, they have risen now? Are you considering them more seriously based on what you saw yesterday?
I think, look, between the three of them, Liverpool, Arsenal and City, and what we've seen in this first weekend, all of them have got, I think, cases for saying that they could win the league. And all equal cases. I don't think there's any of the three that you would look at and think they're above the other. I'm going to be asked to go on Monday Night Football tomorrow night and make a prediction of who I'm going to win the league, and I'm going to probably say Arsenal again because I've said them the last 3 seasons. But honestly, I think Liverpool, with Isak coming in, could easily win the league if they settle those two full-backs down and they get Gravenberch back. They could easily win this league by 5, 6, 7 points. We could be staring the obvious in the face that Pep Guardiola signs Reinders, he gets Rodri, his kingpin back in midfield. They've got the best striker in the league in Haaland and probably one of the best strikers in the world that scores 40 goals. And all of a sudden you've got Stones and Diaz who could become the best centre-back pairing in the league all of a sudden if they're at the best. And you would say, you could be looking back in 6 months and saying, well, it was staring you in the face. They've got a treble-winning spine. They've got new players that look outstanding. They've got the best forward in the league in terms of scoring goals. So, and then you look at Arsenal and you think, the last two pieces of the jigsaw, they've got probably the best defensive unit. They look like they're a real team. They're difficult to beat. They're great on set pieces. Gyökeres obviously looks like he's a handful and a threat up front. Zubimendi in midfield. So all three have got genuine cases. I know that there won't be equal favourites. I know Liverpool will be slightly ahead. But I don't think if you ask Liverpool fans or if you ask City fans or asked Arsenal fans, I don't think any of them would sit here and say they were confident they would win the league this season. But I think they'd all think we've got a great chance of winning the league because the three of them are really close, I think.
I was interested that you did say it's just three. And sort of putting it into the context of this weekend, I'm just thinking of the other ones who might make an argument. Chelsea, of course, have started with a blank game against Palace. Villa and Newcastle blotted each other out. Spurs have had a good home win. That's a nice launch for Thomas Frank.
Yeah, I'm not being dismissive of the other teams in terms of saying that they're poor teams or nowhere near good enough. They just haven't got that. They haven't got that experience, that maturity, that title-winning feeling about them yet. Those teams that you've just mentioned, Aston Villa and Newcastle, are not going to win the league. I think he's specifically mainly referring to Chelsea. Maybe they've won the World Club Championship. They finished obviously in Champions League spaces last season. But when I look at Chelsea, they've got obviously a lot of very good young players. But you're not looking at João Pedro and Delap in the same light as you're looking at sort of Arsenal's front players or Liverpool's front players or City's. You're just not. They're good players and I think they'll have a good season, Chelsea. But no, I'm not looking at them and thinking that there is that sort of spine of a title-winning team there yet. It's not ready. It's not right. I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Bless me. So yeah, that's just not been, and that's not just because of today. I think we'd have said exactly the same before this game. They've drawn against a very good team today in Crystal Palace. So for me, yeah, I think that top three are going to be fighting it out till probably, one of them may drop away a few weeks before the end, but I don't know which one it would be. But I think those three are going to be the ones that are going to be going for it.
Okay, let's just finish with probably, if you're a neutral looking down, what must have been the happiest place in England yesterday would be Sunderland.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what a sensational start.
Yeah.
And you know, of course, and I do too, having watched football there, it is a great place when it's bouncing.
Yeah.
And seeing the pictures of it yesterday, it was bouncing.
Yeah, I mean, what a day. What a day. And you saw those faces in the crowd when the goals were going in, and it's an amazing sort of situation when you see clubs come up. You referred to obviously a game earlier today about Brentford against, I think, Arsenal a few seasons ago, and it was magnificent that night. And you wish you'd have been at Sunderland yesterday, just experiencing. They've missed out for so many years, such a great football club. But the more importantly, I think obviously we've talked a lot about, and I'm worried about it actually, about the three from the Championship coming up and then going straight back down. I am worried about that situation. But actually, when I saw Sunderland yesterday, there was a lot of things that I liked. The physicality in the air with the headed goals. I think the fact that they had players that looked like they were really sort of powerful and strong, could make runs in behind, they were really direct. And I think we've seen some teams come up from the Championship and they've tried to play these 1,000 passes from the back, and I lose the will to live.
Manchester United heading into the new season is one of cautious optimism. Cautious being the key word. Once the dopamine of a €200 million transfer spend on a new attack wears off and the cut and thrust of the season takes hold, some familiar problems will hold true. But from Ruben Amorim and his coaching staff to the playing squad, who were in high spirits as a near-complete group including Joshua Zirkzee, Andre Onana and Benjamin Sesko trained on Sunday, there is a belief things can, must and will improve, starting on Sunday against Arsenal. Goals were Amorim's biggest source of frustration last season, and there was a clear lack of them en route to finishing 15th in the Premier League, their worst season for 51 years. United ranked 16th for goals scored per match 1.2 and 12th for shots on target 4.6. United had just one player in the top 56 Premier League scorers from open play last season, Amad Diallo with 8. They ranked dead last for headed goals for and second worst for shot conversion with a strike rate of 8.33%, despite taking the 7th most shots 528. Only 2 United players made it into the top 50 for chances created. The statistics made for galling reading and painted a clear picture for Director of Football Jason Wilcox,